In today's episode, narcissist boss and complicit company get what they deserve. Refuse to pay $60 to fix my roof. Okay, I'll close your building site down and cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So let's get started. Narcissist boss and complicit company get what they deserve. A bit of background. A few years ago, I quit my career in the tech industry. This was after the company I was working for went public and everything went downhill. I was sick of making money for the rich and needed some time to really live life. I proceeded to spend a few months traveling, working on home projects, and really doing whatever the hell I wanted. One day, about 4 months into my freedom, I was having lunch with my best friend and she told me you need to stop being lazy and get a job. She had recently been hired at a company in the construction industry and mentioned there was an opening. The opening was doing something I had zero experience in, but a change of career was appealing. I applied and promptly was given a phone interview. I spent a little time researching everything about this position, and after many interviews managed to fake my way in. Turns out this position was wildly different from anything I had done before. It taxed me in ways I had never experienced. Not only was my job stressful, my boss turned into a nightmare. He had worked there since the company was founded. He was a part of the Good OL Boys Club. Now, for everyone that doesn't know, the construction industry has virtually zero HR. This was close to $1 billion company and was still the same way. My boss was a narcissist, sexist, liar, and downright jerk. Weirdly, most of that was directed towards others and not me. My best friend was one person that took the brunt of it. It killed me to hear what he would say to her. All of this took its toll on me. New Year's Day. About 3 months into my employment, January 1st hit. I wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning with pain in my chest, and my head racing 1,000,000 miles an hour. Luckily, my roommate was a paramedic and happened to be home. I rush over to her room and yell that I think I'm having a heart attack. She comes out, takes my vitals, asks some questions, and determines I am most likely having a panic attack. Sure enough, I calmed down and managed to not die. I had never had a panic attack up until then. Throughout the following week, I continue to have flare ups of chest pain and heart palpitations. I figure something could really be wrong, so I go to my doctor. He does a few tests and determines it's most likely some acid reflux. He prescribes some meds and the following week is better. Then, one night when heading home from dinner with my sister, boom, I get rear-ended at a stoplight by a drunk driver. No skid marks. Didn't even attempt to stop. I felt a bit of tightness in my back, so decide to go get checked out at the hospital to be safe. I get there and they take my vitals. My blood pressure was on the moon. Like 180/100. They take it about an hour later, and it's still high. They recommend I go see my doctor again. The next couple weeks waiting for my doctor appointment is hell. I am having daily panic attacks, chest pain, trouble breathing, massive fatigue. The whole gambit. Finally get to the day of my appointment, let my doctor know what's going on, and he determines I should go see a few different specialists and get all kinds of tests done to be safe. Throughout the next couple months and have everything poked and prodded. Because of the amount of tests that needed to be done, I missed a good bit of work. This turned my boss on me. He constantly complained about me being gone. All the while not an ounce of work was dropped. With my tech background, I also took it upon myself to start making reports and collecting data that I would present to him on ways of improving the department and company. I later found out, he would take these reports, which at times could save the company hundreds of thousands to potentially millions of dollars, and present them as his own to the owner. This made me furious and didn't help with my physical issues. However, slowly I made it through all of the prescribed tests, and they couldn't find anything physically wrong with me. Turns out, all of the issues were caused by stress and anxiety. Something I had never had an issue with before. My doctor referred me to an amazing counselor that helped me learn how to manage the problems I was facing and get back to a reasonable state of mind. Although, this never got to an acceptable level because of my boss. I started to email HR with my issues with him and things I have witnessed with others. Most of this was met with unwillingness to help in any way. Cue the turning point. A dear coworker whom everyone loved and respected decided to quit out of nowhere. She too worked under my boss. In her exit interview, she gave the sole reason for quitting as my boss. She finally hit her breaking point and enough was enough. However, because she was so well liked, this prompted some questions from the owner and other senior management. They wanted to know why my boss was the reason for her leaving. They had HR set up a meeting with us in the department and our boss to go over our issues with him. We all were excited to finally, hopefully, get the people that matter to listen. We have the meeting and we all lay out the issues with our boss and give a multitude of examples. I went a bit overboard and had an entire presentation. Turns out this was all a charade to cover my boss's ass. He was prescribed some management counseling, which I'm pretty sure he never did, and things continued on their merry way. However, now, with the knowledge my boss had of our issues with him, he turned the volume up to 11. The constant berating, yelling, right UPS came flowing out. It got bad enough that I started to secretly record every meeting with him. I saved every single email and documented every interaction with him. I continued to push for help from HR, but again, his status in the company kept him immune from any response. Thankfully, throughout all of this, I managed to keep my mental health in check thanks to my counselor's tools. I once again get sick. Yes. I get sick, but this time it's with a real cold and lasts a few days. All of which covered by government-mandated sick time. I come back to work and not even a week goes by and I get called into my boss's office with other senior management. I knew this wasn't good. My boss lets me know that they are firing me for attendance. I am gobsmacked. I have never been fired in my life and I know I was an asset to the company's success. I didn't slack off, I didn't miss deadlines, the attendance excuse appeared to just be what my boss thought would be easiest to get rid of me with. Now, I live in an at-will state. You can be fired for basically any reason except for a bad one. They presented me with a meager 2-week pay severance. I declined signing it, packed my stuff up and left. I knew the whole situation didn't feel right, especially because I was familiar with the recent state laws that passed about sick time and an employer not being legally allowed to fire you for using it. Because of this, I went to my mom, who's been in the law field her entire life, and got a referral for an employment law attorney. Things start to look up. The day of my appointment with the employment law attorney couldn't come quick enough. I had gathered everything I had collected from my time at the company and presented it to him. The recordings on my phone, the emails, the documented interactions, everything. After showing the attorney, he pushes back from his desk and says, "You have a hell of a case here. They messed up bad." A wave of relief flows over my entire body. Me thinking the only blatant violation was firing me for using sick time, I was taken aback when he proceeded to explain that the company made 4 huge violations. The sick time violation not even being anywhere near the top of the list. Some big things I learned from him. The meeting I had with my boss, HR, and the rest of the department where we went over all of our issues with him was a key piece of evidence for one of their biggest violations. I learned this type of meeting is considered protected concerted activity and covered under the National Labor Relations Act. The act protects against retaliation for having this kind of meeting. According to my lawyer, all of my boss's activities following that meeting can be considered retaliation. When it comes to health issues and how they affect you at your workplace, make sure you document every interaction with your employer. It's important to show that you made an effort to let them know of your complications and how they may affect you at your workplace. I sent countless emails to HR letting them know of my mental health issues, and their failure to make accommodations was a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Having recordings and documentation on how your employer interacts differently with females and males is important to prove a violation of the Civil Rights Act. After all of this, the lawyer stated I had 3 options. Option 1, I could retain him, and we could file a lawsuit. He explained that would be expensive and take a lot of time. However, would most likely result in a good amount of money. Option 2, I could file claims with all of the departments that cover the violated acts. He explained that some of these departments can take years to investigate and process the claims. However, for some of them, especially the violation of the National Labor and Relations Act, the investigation can be absolute hell on the employer. This would probably be the biggest FU to the employer. Option 3, I go back by myself and renegotiate the severance. This being the quickest and easiest option. This option sounded very appealing. I really didn't want to drag this out for multiple years. I told the lawyer that option 3 is most likely my choice, and he mentioned that I should probably start negotiations at 9 months of severance and full benefits. After consulting with people close to me, I decided to go with option 3. I met with HR and senior management, explained that I consulted with an employment law attorney, stated all of the acts that he feels they violated, and asked for 9 months of severance. After a couple weeks negotiating with their attorney, we settled on 6 months of severance with full benefits. It's been a few years since this has happened, and it still makes me feel overwhelmingly happy thinking about it. In the end, I found an absolutely amazing job in the same industry. My ex-boss ended up being moved to a position that wasn't in management. And hopefully, nobody will ever have to go through what I and others went through at that company again. Refused to pay $60 to fix my roof. Okay, I'll close your building site down and cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Names, places and timeframes have been changed as per rules. Characters in this story. My friend, who I will call Brian, bullying demolition man we will call Keith, greedy property developer we will call Karen, and the insurance assessor. This tale of this nuclear revenge happened a while back and is a work in progress. It is too good not to tell, and I will try and keep you updated down the track. Brian's neighbor is a typical greedy career landlord that left their rental house in disrepair. The poor tenant was living in the cold house, raw sewerage leaking onto the lawn and holes in the house that you could see light coming out of the house. After multiple requests from Brian, Karen refused to get any repairs done. When the state government introduced new laws about ensuring landlords are insulating their rental properties, instead doing this to the house, Karen kicked their tenant out and left the house vacant for 5 years. The old house deteriorated so much more during this time, with rats infesting the house and invading other houses nearby. Brian and his wife with their limited funds were able to get sufficient lending from the bank and offered to buy the house and do it up themselves to improve the neighborhood or rent it out, as there is a massive shortage of rental properties in our local county. Greedy Karen did not want to sell, nor did she want to spend a cent on the house to remedy the rodent problem. She also did not care about the effect the house was having on aesthetics of the street. It is important to know that Karen and her wealthy family have over 100 rental properties, and due to lax tax laws in this region, they do not pay a cent and can get tax write-offs when their properties deteriorate, then can claim on this as a loss. Long story short, some of them appear to be leeches on our society and are one of the reasons property prices are so high and rent prices are skyrocketing in our area. Her husband is also the chairman of the state's Landlords Association, an association that he often fronts the media for, defending landlords and putting a good media spin on them when there is negative press. Fast forward 5 years and Brian finds out the house is going to be demolished to make way for some new houses to go in on the small section. That's good news at least, though Brian and his wife were anxious about how smoothly the demolition would go due to the fact the houses are quite close to each other. This is important for later. Prior to demolition, the company doing it had to get samples from all sides of the house to check for asbestos. Either Karen made it difficult for the company to get down the side bordering Brian's house, or they simply were too lazy, but only samples from 3 sides not 4 were taken. Demolition day came around and Brian was concerned that no safety barriers had been put up to protect his house from falling bricks of the chimney, nor was there anything from stopping dust and debris going all over his new deck and porch area. Later that day, Brian had the pleasure of meeting Keith. Keith is the demolition company manager that is well known around the district for only caring about money and has little regard for people or property. Keith was doing the demolition himself today simply with a digger. Brian returned home during his break at work to check the progress of the demolition, and found the demolition was already complete after only an hour or so. The demolished house was in a pile. He climbed up on his roof and to his disbelief found hundreds of bricks had fallen onto his roof, causing damage, though he was lucky none had fallen through into the house. Brian phoned up demolition man Keith to ask about what went wrong. Keith initially played down the damage, despite there being 200 bricks laying on Brian's roof. Even with the damage done, no apology, and the rude attitude of Keith, Brian kept his cool. "Since I did a little bit of roofing when I was younger, I can fix up the roof if you just get me 4 new sheets of roofing iron, and we will call it even. Don't worry about paying for paint, I can sort that out when I paint the whole roof after the fall." Brian's roof was not in the best of shape, but it was in much worse shape after having bricks dumped on it, leaving massive dents and chipping the paint. This is the moment that a simple decision on Keith's part would screw him and the landlord big time. "Not happening, pal, your roof is F***kid anyway. I'll get you a sheet of second-hand roofing iron from my yard to repair the damage on roof, and I can come and hose off the dust off your deck and dog kennel." Cue the nuclear revenge. The revenge was not intentionally nuclear, but Brian had a dilemma that his roof was damaged and he needed it repaired. There was rain and snow forecast later in the week, and he shouldn't be out of pocket having to buy new materials to fix his own roof up to a good standard. Brian is normally calm and relaxed man, but this situation and the way he and his property were treated sparked an angst that I have never seen before. Brian got in contact with his insurance company, and due to the issue involving a roof, a building assessor arrived that day to assess the claim. The assessor would then be able to seek damages from the landlord or demolition company if he found them to be at fault. Brian also reported the demolition company to the local health and safety authorities due to their lack of safety precautions used when doing the demolition. The assessor got onto the roof with Brian and was mortified to hear how Keith had acted in such disregard with the damage done to the roof, and his lack of an apology for any wrongdoing got the assessor mad. He then looked more concerned and bent down and picked up some gray fibrous material. Luckily, thanks to COVID, we already have masks on Brian. This here looks like it is asbestos. I don't know how they got the sign off to get this house knocked down in this manner. You don't know at the time of being exposed to this stuff, but if you breathe in these fibers it can cause serious diseases later on in life, including lung cancer. I'll get this sent off to the lab for testing, and we'll be in touch. Fast forward another day and Brian was contacted by his insurance company. It turns out the side of the house that wasn't tested was clad in asbestos. Not just any bad asbestos, the worst possible type you can get. Insurance will be seeking damages to replace Brian's whole roof, not just the damaged part. The cost of replacement is likely to be around $20,000 USD. This is the cheap part. The demolition site has been shut down by local authorities, and there needs to be a massive decontamination of the area. This involves having to remove at least half a meter of topsoil on surrounding properties, test the soil, and remove more if there is asbestos still found. Areas with decks need to potentially have these removed so soil can be evacuated out underneath. The cost for this cleanup will likely be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but who will pay for this is unknown at this stage. Whether it is Keith or Karen's insurance or them personally, time will tell. In regards to Brian, his family and their dog potentially being exposed to the asbestos, that is another battle for them to fight, and I will keep you updated. Update 1. I have just been on the phone to Brian for half an hour. His workplace were very sympathetic and paid for him to have 2 days off trying to sort things out. This is in complete contrast to Karen and Keith, who are yet to apologize and have made life difficult for Brian and his family. Due to the neighboring property being closed off for entry due to the health and safety investigation going on, it means Brian cannot even get scaffolding on his roof yet to fix the roof. Brian is worried now that the landlord is going to try make his life hell. She is also a lawyer apparently. Karen was the person that offered the old roofing iron, apparently not Keith. She spoke to her husband, who said that because the bricks dented the roof it means it must have been rusty and old, so doesn't need new iron put on. Keith did however go nuts at Brian for getting insurance involved, and also the health and safety investigation unit who are currently doing the investigation. In regards to Brian and family still living in the house. According to the investigator, the risk is negligible and the problems will arise when the debris are removed from the section. This will require a large tent etc. However, the wind has been strong last few days, and I feel risk is still high living next door to uncovered broken asbestos cladding that is not being kept damp. Brian asked the investigation office person by phone about what to do about his dog, and if they needed vet checkup etc. They were 1 m away from the fence, which is about a foot from the asbestos, when it was broken up. They responded saying, "Do you think your dog will live more than 20 years? If not, I probably wouldn't worry." Brian is also thinking the landlord is probably scheming revenge of her own. Brian paid for a new fence himself a few years back to border Karen's rental, as when he moved in the old fence was half falling down, she refused to pay half despite this being law. He reckons because the fence is approximate 10 centimeters too high, she will ask him to cut the height down at his own cost so it is in perfect position for her new houses that are to be built. Brian's plan is that he will pull the nice expensive fence down entirely and put 600mm high chicken wire mesh up, as this is all that is required by law, and there is nothing she can do about it legally as he paid for and built the fence. I will continue to keep you all updated. Also, as I know the local newspaper editor, I have offered to go with Brian to discuss this story with them once the investigation is completed if Karen tries to make life difficult and also expose Keith for his dirty practices. Keith's company have just been awarded a multi-million-dollar contract for demolition of an old car factory, and this would raise some eyebrows. Update to a very small update, but not great news. I feel this story, as many have suggested, will not conclude in a warm fuzzy feeling of ultimate revenge as things progress. Firstly, Brian informed me a fence has gone up around the exposed parts of neighboring property. This is only to stop people from public going over to debris pile and scavenging etc., then exposing themselves to the broken asbestos cladding. Brian also needed to take 2 full days off work when this happened to try sort out all the situation and reduce stress on his wife. Talking with all parties involved. So he was down 2 days' wages coming up to Christmas, but his kind boss has paid him special leave for taking them off. The insurance company, after further clarification, will be only paying out for 1/4 of roof and flashings. Brian will have to find funds to pay for the rest. This section of roof is however the most expensive, as it encompasses a large complex parapet, gutter, roofing iron and flashings. Cost? $8,000 USD/120 kZAR. I hope I can provide something more substantial in a later update when there has been more action. Update 3 January 9, 2021. Wish this update was actually something to update you on, but alas, it is merely to say due to the Christmas break etc. nothing has progressed. Brian cannot get his roof fixed until the area beside his house is decontaminated so the scaffolding can then go up. Update 4 March 20, 2021. Another downer of an update. Brian is being paid $8,000 towards his roof. The landlord/contractor got away with not needing a huge area cleanup and convinced local authorities that the building site would be sufficient for decontamination, as the testers could not find samples over the fences of surrounding houses. All topsoil on old section was removed and replaced. A new house has been quickly built by landlord's builder. The house looks as cheap as they come. A kit-set house and looks out of place. Sort of like a house you could load onto a truck and move if needed in future. Brian still hasn't had his roof fixed yet as he needs to save money to afford to pay for whole roof. Update 5 April 13, 2021. Wow. Brian tells me the demolition company are taking his insurance company to court on the amount they have to pay for roof. Thanks for watching.